My name is Chloe Sterling. I'm 35, and I'm the official black sheep of a very wealthy Denver family. At my grandmother's will reading, they were practically buzzing as millions in company stock and assets were passed around like hors d'oeuvres. Then, my mother's voice, sharp and laced with amusement, cut through the room. A single plane ticket to Switzerland. That was it. A wave of snickers and outright laughter followed. I felt my face flush a hot wave of shame, but I held onto that envelope and managed a level smile. "I'm sure she had her reasons," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. They all figured I'd been cast aside, a final punishment for choosing my guitar over their gleaming hotel empire. But that ticket wasn't a punishment. It was a test. Tucked inside the envelope was a small, folded note in her familiar cursive. "Your rail story begins now." My heart hammered against my ribs when I landed in Zurich, and a chauffeur holding a sign with my name on it approached me. "The custodian is expecting you, Miss Sterling," he said, his expression completely unreadable. A shiver went down my spine. My grandmother hadn't left me money. She'd left me a truth, one that was about to shatter their entire world. The laughter back at the estate, those smug, self-satisfied looks, they were about to choke on them. That ticket wasn't her disowning me. It was her choosing me. For what, I didn't know yet. But I was about to find out, here in Switzerland, where secrets she had guarded for a lifetime were waiting for me. Every step I took felt like an act of defiance, a quiet rebellion against their years of scorn. They thought they had won. They had no idea I was about to change the entire game. Before I tell you how that one flight rewrote my entire existence, leave a comment below. What's the craziest family secret you've ever stumbled upon? And tell me where you're watching from. Make sure you hit subscribe to follow this journey, where betrayal gets flipped into power and a hidden past changes everything. Growing up in a sprawling Denver mansion, our entire universe orbited the Sterling name. My father, Richard, was a titan of industry, a ruthless dealmaker who lived and breathed for Sterling Peaks Hotels. His voice was a constant, booming presence in our home, always on the phone negotiating some merger or land acquisition, his eyes perpetually scanning for and leverage. My mother, Eleanor, was the queen of Denver high society, an event planner whose life was a whirlwind of charity balls and exclusive luncheons. She would glide through our home in expensive gowns, her smile perfected, her every move calculated to uphold the family's pristine image. Their marriage was less a romance and more a strategic alliance, a union built on power and public perception, with little room for anything that didn't serve the brand. And then there was my younger brother, Mark. He was their masterpiece, groomed from the day he was born to inherit their kingdom. By the time he was 10, he'd sit at the dinner table with my father, casually discussing corporate law like it was a video game, earning impressed nods from guests. He was the golden child, the heir who fit their mold flawlessly. I was 4 years older, but I might as well have been from another planet. I was the one who asked the uncomfortable questions. Why does it matter what the Vanderbilts think of our new resort? I asked once during a formal dinner, my voice cutting through the polite clinking of glasses. The entire table went silent. My father's face went dark, his hand clenching his fork. "The Sterling name means something in this city, Chloe," he snapped. "You threaten it with your naive questions." My mother's gaze was just as cold. "We have a standard to maintain," she said, her tone sharp. "It's time you learned it." Across the table, Mark just smirked, the ever-loyal soldier. That was the core of our divide. They worshipped status, and I craved authenticity. The favoritism was impossible to ignore. Mark was given private tutors and prestigious summer internships. I was given lectures on being more responsible. Family holidays were just another stage for it. My father would toast Mark's debate team victories while completely ignoring my first solo music performance. My mother would frame his perfect report cards, but call my songwriting a childish hobby. There was only one person who saw me, really saw me, my grandmother, Matilda Sterling, the woman who started it all. She hadn't been born into money. She built Sterling Peaks Hotels from the ground up, a fiercely determined woman who turned a single, run-down motel into a billion-dollar hospitality chain. Her hands were still rough from a lifetime of hard work, and her eyes had a fire that belonged to someone who had beaten the odds. Unlike my parents, she cared about substance, not just appearances. Some of my best memories are of sitting on her sun-drenched porch, just the two of us with her old acoustic guitars. While my father was drilling Mark on contract law, she was teaching me chords and melodies, her fingers still nimble on the frets. "Music shows you who you are, kid," she'd say, her warm blue eyes, so much like my own, twinkling. "It doesn't play the games their business world does." Those afternoons were my sanctuary. Her lessons weren't just about music, they were about character. "Build your life on trust," she'd tell me, pausing mid-song. "Your word is your contract. That's what makes an empire last." I held on to every story she told me about her early days, about sleeping in her car and making deals with nothing but a handshake and her own integrity. "They all thought I was a fool," she'd laugh. But honesty always pays the best interest. Mark made fun of the time I spent with her, calling it a waste, but with Matilda, I felt seen. I was valued for being Chloe, not for what I could contribute to the family name. Those moments were side GI that fueled my passion, but back in the main house, the family's bias only got worse. Mark's achievements were marked with extravagant dinners and praise. Mine were met with silence. I remember showing my mother a song I'd written, and she barely looked up from the guest list she was planning. "Focus on something with a future, dear," she said, before turning her attention back to Mark's latest academic award. My father enrolled him in leadership programs, all while questioning every single dream I had. Matilda was my anchor. Her porch was my safe harbor where she'd share her quiet truths. "Never sell your soul, Chloe," she'd whisper while we played a duet. "Not even if they don't get it." I thought our bond was everything, that she would always be in my corner, shielding me from them. But as the years went by, her lessons were planting seeds of independence I hadn't yet recognized. Their favoritism was meant to isolate me, but Matilda's quiet strength gave me hope. I just didn't know that their choices, and hers, were setting me on a path I could never have imagined. My favorite thing in the world was playing guitar on the porch with my grandmother Matilda. But as I got into my late teens, the pressure from my family became a suffocating weight, forcing me into a decision that would test everything she had taught me. College application season was upon us, and my parents had already mapped out my life: business school at a prestigious university, then straight into a management track at Sterling Peaks Hotels, right alongside Mark. He was already excelling, interning at my father's preferred law firm, his ambition a perfect reflection of theirs. But I wanted music. I dreamed of a conservatory, of composing and performing on stages where my songs could actually connect with people. The thought of spreadsheets and boardrooms made me feel like I couldn't breathe. I wanted to create melodies that told my truth. During one of our painfully formal family dinners, I finally found the courage to say it. "I'm applying to music conservatories," I announced. My voice was steady, but my stomach was in knots. The entire room went rigid. My mother's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. "Music school?" she repeated, the disbelief in her voice making the words sound ridiculous. "That's not a career, Chloe. It's a phase." My father tossed his napkin onto his plate. "We built this entire legacy, and you want to throw it away on a hobby?" Mark just watched, a smug look on his face, as if my rebellion was just more proof of his own superiority. I looked to Matilda, my heart pleading. Her voice was the only one that could ever cut through their noise. But she just sat there, her expression completely neutral, offering me nothing. Her silence was the deepest cut of all, a quiet endorsement of their judgment. Later, she found me alone in the long hallway. "You're choosing a hard road," she said softly. "Music will demand everything from you. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Her words didn't feel like support. They felt like a final warning. "You're the one who always told me to follow my heart," I protested, my frustration boiling over. She let out a long sigh. "Hearts are fragile. They can break under the weight of the world. Choose carefully." It was the closest she ever came to telling me I was wrong. But it wasn't enough to change my mind. When the acceptance letters came, my parents' reaction was swift and brutal. "We are not funding this delusion," my father declared, officially cutting me off from any tuition or financial support. Mark, of course, got his entire law school education funded without question. I got nothing. And Matilda? She didn't step in. Her silence was the final nail in the coffin of my place in that family. I cobbled together loans and a small scholarship and enrolled anyway, burning with the need to prove them all wrong. Austin, Texas became my new home, a city that didn't know or care about the Sterling name. I found a tiny, rundown apartment with paper-thin walls and threw myself into the local music scene. The gigs I played in smoky, crowded bars barely paid rent, but those were nights of pure, honest performance where my songs about feeling like an outsider resonated with strangers. I put out my own music, small batch EPs that slowly built a small, dedicated following through word of mouth and late-night college radio shows. Some critics called my work painfully authentic, but success was a slow, grueling climb without their money as a safety net. Contact with my family shriveled to tense, obligatory holiday calls. Still trying to make it with that guitar? My mother would ask, her voice dripping with pity. The updates about Mark's life, law school awards, a partnership at a top firm were like salt in an open wound, each one a reminder of my perceived failure. Matilda would send birthday cards, always with $100 bill tucked inside, which I never spent. She never once mentioned my music. I started to resent her more than anyone, wondering if she had ever really believed in me, or if I was just the family charity case. Still, I kept going. I booked my own tours, collaborated with other indie artists, and carved out a small space for myself. One of my albums gained some real traction, earning reviews that called it hauntingly beautiful. It wasn't mainstream fame, but it was my own. It was validation. The chasm between my family and me grew wider. Visits home were rare and always ended in arguments. My father's jabs about my wasted potential still stung, but I learned to tune them out, focusing on the life I was building on my own. Matilda's lessons about integrity still echoed in my head, guiding my decisions even as her silence continued to hurt. I had found a certain strength in the struggle, learning that real independence sometimes meant being completely alone. But I still wondered about her. What was the point of her lessons on truth if she was complicit in their lies? Her empire was thriving under Mark's future leadership, but I felt like there was a piece of her story missing, a truth she had never told me. My career was small, but it was real, built from a struggle they could never comprehend. One dreary afternoon, my mother called. Her voice was colder than usual. "Your grandmother passed away," she said, with no warmth, no emotion. "The funeral is in Denver on Saturday. Try not to be late." I flew back, hoping for a quiet moment to grieve, but the Sterling estate had been turned into a stage. It was a performance of sorrow, filled with crocodile tears and hushed business deals. Industry leaders in expensive suits exchanged business cards next to the casket, their condolences just a thin cover for networking. My father was in his element, working the room, his handshake firm, his eyes already looking for his next opportunity. Mark, now a sleek and polished lawyer, was charming a group of investors, his smile just a little too perfect. And my mother orchestrated the whole affair, her own smile flawless, but completely empty, as if grief was just another event on her social calendar. I stood off to the side, clutching the funeral program with Matilda's name on it, feeling more like a stranger than ever. Their glances were like tiny daggers, my simple dress and worn jacket a silent judgment in their sea of designer black. The will reading was held in the dark, wood-paneled study, the air thick with greed and anticipation. The family lawyer, a stern, gray-haired man, began to read. My parents were left a staggering inheritance, $100 million in stocks, real estate, and cash. They just nodded, as if it was exactly what they were owed. Mark was named the new head of Sterling Peaks Hotels, the entire empire Matilda had built from nothing. He leaned back in his chair, a smug glint in his eye, the newly crowned king. Finally, my name came up. The lawyer slid a single, crisp envelope across the polished table. To Chloe Sterling, one first-class ticket to Zurich, Switzerland. There was a beat of stunned silence, and then the room erupted in laughter. My mother's voice cut through the noise. "A plane ticket?" She sneered. "Is that all you're worth?" Mark chuckled. "Guess she didn't like your songs that much after all." My father's stare was like ice. "You never learn, do you?" I gripped the envelope, my face burning, but I forced my voice to be calm. "She must have had a plan," I said, my gaze locked on my mother. Her smirk faltered, just for a second. Inside, there was a handwritten note from Matilda. "Your real story begins now." That was it. No explanation. The others immediately went back to dividing their spoils, but I couldn't get her words out of my head. Why Zurich? Was this her final rejection, or was it something else entirely? As the gathering started to break up, the business talk became more blatant. My father was already pitching a new resort expansion to a developer. Mark was shaking hands, sealing some new deal. My mother grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't you dare ruin this for us," she hissed. "Take your little ticket and disappear." I pulled my arm away. "I'm going to find out what this is about," I said and walked out. That night, alone in a cheap hotel room, my phone rang. "Chloe, this is Clara." The woman's voice was urgent, but steady. "I'm your aunt. Matilda wanted me to call you. There's something in Zurich, something she kept hidden." My hand tightened around the phone. "An aunt?" "She never said anything about you," I said, my guard instantly up. "I'm family," she replied. From a part of her life she had to keep secret. "Go to Zurich, Chloe. You'll finally understand." Then she hung up. My mind was racing. Matilda's note, the ticket, this mysterious aunt, it was all connected. My family was celebrating their millions, thinking they had won. But Matilda's final act felt like a chess move, a deliberate challenge aimed only at me. What was waiting for me in Zurich? And why me? Her handwriting seemed to burn in my mind, pulling me toward an unknown future, a pull that was far stronger than their contempt. I left the family estate immediately after the funeral and found a rundown motel on the outskirts of Denver. The room had that familiar smell of stale cigarettes and damp carpet, and the single flickering lamp threw long, dancing shadows on the walls. My mother's sneer and Mark's self-satisfied grin were seared into my memory, their laughter from the will reading still ringing in my ears. Matilda's note, "Your real story begins now," felt heavy in my hand. The ticket to Zurich was a mystery I couldn't piece together. What had she intended with this? I needed to talk to someone, so I called Leo, my best friend from my early days in Austin, the one person who had championed my music when everyone else wrote me off. "You have to go," he urged, his voice a comforting crackle over the phone. "Your grandmother was the sharpest person you knew. Nothing she did was random. There's a reason for this." His words brought back a memory of Matilda, sitting with me on her porch. "Your identity isn't their name, Chloe," she had said, her gaze firm. "It's the truth you build for yourself." I had always assumed she was talking about my music, but now I wondered if she was pointing to something much bigger. I booked the flight. My resolve was fragile, but I was going. The flight to Zurich was a sleepless blur of anxious thoughts. When I finally stepped out of the airport and into the crisp Swiss air, I saw a driver holding a sign that just said, "Chloe Sterling." He nodded at me. "The custodian awaits," he said, his tone formal and serious. My heart did a little jump. The custodian? Who is that? The car moved silently through streets lined with historic buildings and high-end boutiques, the city exuding a quiet, old-world wealth. We arrived at a discreet, modern office building where I was met by a man named Adrian Croft. He was impeccably dressed, with a reserved smile and intelligent eyes. "I'm Adrian, Matilda's advisor," he said, shaking my hand. "Some people call me the custodian." There was a knowing look in his eyes, but he didn't explain. He led me into a conference room where two women were waiting, their presence filling the room. One of them was Clara, my aunt. Her face was just as I'd imagined from her voice on the phone. "You came," she said, her smile warm but her eyes cautious. The other woman, Isabel Vance, was poised and elegant, with streaks of silver in her dark hair. She studied me for a long moment. "You have Matilda's eyes," she murmured, her voice soft but tinged with a deep sadness. I froze. "You knew her?" I asked. Isabel's lips formed a faint, melancholic smile. "I was her partner, long before the hotels and the empire." Partner. The word hit me like a physical blow. Matilda had never shared a single personal detail of her life, not even with me. Clara leaned in. We have to tell you who she really was, she said, her voice low and steady. I braced myself. Isabel began to speak, her voice measured and clear. Matilda wasn't born a Sterling. Her name was Mathilde. She was the illegitimate daughter of a powerful Swiss banking magnate who cast her out to protect his family's name. She was raised in secret, with nothing, and eventually fled to America with a few $100s and a will of iron. Isabel's eyes were distant, lost in memory. She built Sterling Peaks on a foundation of absolute trust. Every deal, every contract, she won them because she was the most honest person in the room. That's how one motel in the middle of nowhere became a billion-dollar empire. My breath caught in my throat. She never told me, I whispered. Clara reached out and gently touched my hand. She hid it to protect herself and to protect you, she said. Her past had enemies here. Powerful rivals, even distant family who resented her very existence. Adrian nodded. She sent you here for a very specific reason, he said quietly. You aren't like your parents or your brother. You're like her. My thoughts were a whirlwind. All those years, I had been so angry at Matilda's silence, believing she thought my dreams were foolish. But what if she was just protecting me? I remembered all her lessons about truth, about building something real. Maybe that's what she meant by identity, not just my music, but her own hidden history. Isabel's gaze softened. She saw your spirit, your refusal to play their games and bow to their rules. That's why she chose you. A knot in my chest loosened, a mix of old pain and new understanding. For my entire life, I had felt like the family reject, but maybe, just maybe, Matilda had seen me as her successor all along. Clara stood up, her expression resolute. There's more you need to see, she said. Adrian pulled a single, ornate key from his pocket, his eyes sharp. It's time you saw her real legacy. We drove out of the city, toward a serene lake, the city lights shrinking behind us. Isabel's words echoed in my mind, Matilda's struggle, her integrity, her secrets. I had tried so hard to build a life on my own terms, but this was something else entirely. The car stopped before a gated estate, its classic architecture a stark, beautiful silhouette against the evening sky. Adrian turned to me, his voice low. Welcome to Chloe's Haven. My heart pounded in my chest. A house named for me. What on earth had Matilda left for me here? Back in Denver, I walked into my family's victory gala alongside Isabel and Clara. The grand ballroom of the city's top hotel was glittering, a testament to the Sterling family's dominance. My father, Richard, was holding court by a massive marble fireplace, his voice booming as he pitched his next big project to a circle of rapt investors. My mother, Eleanor, floated through the crowd, her diamond necklace sparkling, her laughter practiced and brittle. My brother, Mark, was working the room with his signature lawyerly charm, shaking hands and making deals with a polished smile. They were in their element, soaking in the glory of the inheritance they felt they deserved, completely oblivious to our arrival. But the moment I stepped over the threshold, a hush fell. The music seemed to fade, and all eyes snapped towards me. The air grew thick with tension. Chloe, my mother said, her smile instantly cracking. Who are these women with you? My father's face hardened, and Mark's grin dissolved, replaced by a flicker of genuine alarm. Isabel's calm presence was like a shield, her silver hair shining under the chandeliers. Clara, my newfound aunt, gave me a subtle, reassuring nod. We're here to discuss Matilda's true legacy, I said, my voice ringing out, clear and steady. My heart was hammering, but I raised the bundle of documents from Zurich, their weight grounding me. Vanguard Holdings, I announced, my words slicing through the stunned silence. Matilda's hidden Swiss company. It's worth billions. She left it all to me, with full control, along with a $150 million fund to create a music foundation. Champagne glasses froze midair. Investors shot each other nervous, questioning glances. Mark let out a harsh, disbelieving laugh. That's ridiculous. Sterling Peaks is the legacy. We own it. My father strode forward, his face a tight mask of fury. You are deeply mistaken, Chloe. That is family money. I met his glare, refusing to back down. Matilda chose me, I replied, my voice unwavering. Not you. My mother's carefully constructed poise finally shattered. You are nobody. She shrieked, her voice sharp as broken glass. You have no right to claim that. Give it up now, or you will regret this. The crowd began to murmur, a ripple of whispers spreading through the room. I could feel gazes on me, some judging, others intrigued. But Matilda's faith in me was a fire in my chest. She had seen their greed, and she had chosen me to protect her real vision. I thought of her lessons of valuing truth over image. Maybe she knew this day would come. Isabel's voice, though soft, cut through the noise. Matilda built this for someone with integrity, she said, gesturing to me. She didn't build it to feed your greed. Clara stepped forward, her tone crisp and legal. The will is ironclad and notarized internationally. If you challenge it, you will face a formidable legal battle you cannot win. A collective gasp went through the guests. Some of them nodded, others looked away, sensing the shift in power. My father's voice dropped to a low, dangerous growl. This isn't over, Chloe. That empire is ours. Mark leaned in close, his eyes cold and empty. Hand it over, he whispered, or we will destroy you. I clutched the papers, my resolve hardening into steel. Matilda had hidden this empire to keep it safe from them. I finally understood. Their entire world was built on control and appearances, not on genuine creation. It's mine, I said, my voice full of a finality they had never heard from me before. And I'm keeping it. The gala erupted into chaos. Whispers, gasps, movement. My mother's face was flushed with pure rage. You will destroy this family, she hissed. I didn't even flinch. Matilda knew you'd try, I said. That's why she trusted me, not you. Isabel's hand gently touched my arm, a silent anchor. Clara's gaze swept the room, a protective shield. My father's face was dark with a furious promise. We will force you to give it up. I stood taller, feeling Matilda's spirit burning inside me. This ballroom, once their stage, now felt like mine. The investors were watching, some with newfound respect, others with caution. I was no longer the outcast. I was Matilda's heir, the keeper of a legacy they could never touch. Their rage was a storm cloud gathering, but the confrontation was only the beginning. Their demands were about to get uglier, and I knew I had to be ready to stand my ground. The family's demands escalated, their threats becoming more personal and vicious than I could have imagined. A few days after the gala, my father summoned me to the estate study. It was a room that reeked of old money and power, with floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves, leather-bound books, and a crystal decanter of whiskey glowing under a desk lamp. My mother, Eleanor, stood beside him, her posture rigid, her eyes like chips of ice. Mark, my brother, was slouched against a wall, thumbing through his phone with a bored expression that couldn't quite mask his fury. Isabel had chosen to wait outside, her quiet support a silent vote of confidence, while Clara joined me, her legal mind a necessary shield. Vanguard Holdings is an asset of this family, my father stated, slamming a thick contract down on the desk. You will sign it over, Chloe. Immediately. My mother's tone was like a razor. You're not equipped to run a corner store, let alone a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You'll bankrupt it chasing your pathetic little music dreams. Mark finally looked up from his phone, a cold smirk playing on his lips. Refuse, he said, and we'll launch a campaign on X. We'll leak every rejection letter you ever got, pay influencers to mock your failed music career. By the time we're done, no venue will book you, no label will touch you, and your name will be a joke. The threat landed like a punch to the gut. A public smearing on X could decimate the small, authentic reputation I had painstakingly built. I could already picture the hashtags, the cruel memes, my name becoming synonymous with failure. My pulse throbbed in my ears, but then I remembered Matilda's words, truth over appearances. She had seen this side of them, their willingness to destroy anything that stood in their way, and she had trusted me to be stronger. I'm not signing anything, I said, my voice solid, betraying none of the fear I felt. My father's eyes blazed. You're throwing away everything we've given you. Mark pushed himself off the wall, his voice low and menacing as he pocketed his phone. We'll make you a ghost. Every producer, every studio in the country will have you on a blacklist. My mother's gaze was arctic. You will be nothing without this family, Chloe. Just a forgotten girl with a guitar. I shoved the contract back across the desk, the paper crinkling under my hand. Matilda gave this to me because she knew what you are, I said, my voice rising with conviction. I'm honoring her legacy, not your empire of lies. Clara stepped forward, her tone sharp and precise. Any attempt at defamation will be met with immediate legal action. The board of Vanguard recognizes Chloe as its leader. Your claims have no standing. The transfer was notarized in Switzerland. My father just scoffed, his face turning a deep shade of red. You think your little lawyer aunt can stop us? My mother suddenly changed tactics, her voice becoming soft and manipulative. Chloe, please. We're your family. Don't let this tear us apart. I just shook my head, Matilda's lessons echoing in my mind, her belief in my strength finally making sense. These aren't tricks, I said, meeting my father's furious glare. This is Matilda's will, and I'm going to see it through. Mark's smirk was gone, his jaw clenched tight. Then you're dead to us. Don't come crawling back when you fail. My mother clutched at her pearl necklace, her whole body trembling with rage. You will regret this for the rest of your life, she hissed, her composure finally breaking. My heart was pounding, but I felt a strange sense of calm. I'm done, I said, the words cutting through the thick, tense air. No more living under your control. No more of your lies. I'm cutting you off. For good. My father let out a roar of pure fury. We will fight you until you have nothing left. His voice bounced off the walls, but the threat felt hollow. It couldn't reach me anymore. Clara put a firm hand on my shoulder and guided me out of the room. Isabel was waiting in the hall, and she gave me a nod that was a silent seal of approval. As the heavy study door slammed shut behind us, their shouts and threats faded into a muffled silence. I was finally truly free. I knew their war was just beginning, but for the first time in my life, I would face it on my own terms. 6 months after I cut all ties, the consequences for my family were both swift and devastating. Mark's promising law career was the first to implode. Whispers of his unethical practices and the dubious contracts he'd arranged for Sterling Peaks hotels finally reached the Colorado Bar Association. The investigation was quick and thorough, uncovering a pattern of forged documents and backroom deals. By springtime, his license was suspended indefinitely, his name disgraced in the legal community he so desperately wanted to conquer. His powerful allies disappeared overnight. My father's empire was next. Spooked by the scandals swirling around Mark and the Sterling name, major investors pulled out of his flagship hotel project. Lifelong business partners suddenly stopped taking his calls. The high society circles of Denver, once my mother's personal kingdom, turned their backs. Her charity galas, which used to be the event of the season, were now sparsely attended. Their invitations were ignored, their reputation sinking into a mire of shameful gossip. The Sterling name, once a symbol of power, was now a cautionary tale. I watched it all happen from a distance. I was living in a simple apartment back in Austin, a world away from. Under my leadership, Vanguard Holdings was thriving, its growth built on the same principles of integrity that Matilda had championed. I poured my energy and a significant portion of the funds into her true vision, the Matilda Sterling Music Foundation. Using the $150 million she had earmarked, I launched programs for underprivileged kids, giving them free music lessons, instruments, and access to recording studios. Our first big event was a youth concert held at a local community center. It was packed. I stood backstage, watching kids play violins and electric guitars, their faces shining with a pride and joy that money could never buy. My heart felt full. This was Matilda's real legacy, not a chain of luxury hotels, but a legacy of creation, connection, and opportunity. It was everything I had been fighting for my whole life. The foundation's work started getting positive local press, and soon my name was associated with hope and community, not with scandal. It wasn't the fame I once craved, but it was something far more meaningful. It was purpose. I never spoke to my family again. Their threats to ruin me online went nowhere. A few angry posts on X gained no traction, quickly buried by the news of their own spectacular downfall. My father sent a single, desperate letter demanding that I return what is rightfully ours. I threw it away without a response. My mother left a series of venomous voicemails, which I deleted without listening. And Mark's silence was the most telling of all. He had no cards left to play. I thought I might feel a pang of guilt, but all I felt was a profound sense of relief. Severing ties with them wasn't a loss, it was a liberation. Matilda's words were always with me. Truth and integrity are worth more than any family name. She built her hidden empire on that foundation, and now so would I. My life wasn't glamorous. I still had bills to pay, and the work was endless. But it was a life that was truly mine, built on choices I was proud of. Looking back, I finally understand the true cost of holding onto toxic relationships. My family's world, an illusion built on status and control, collapsed under the weight of its own emptiness. I had to learn to let them go to protect what really mattered, my values, my music, and my own peace of mind. Matilda taught me that a legacy isn't what's handed down to you. It's what you build for others. I hope you felt the power of that in my story. What legacy would you be willing to fight for? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would genuinely love to read them.